Brilliance Audio presents Iron Will by James Maxwell. Performed by Simon Vance. Dion brought his horse to a sudden halt. From his position on a high mountain trail he had a clear view of the village of Brook Farm in the valley below. He watched as dozens and dozens of red-scaled dragons descended toward the houses. He could almost hear the screams of the folk fleeing in all directions. The dragons tucked in their wings to plummet with speed. Jaws bit down on unarmed peasants. Soldiers astride the dragons thrust spears or hacked down with axes and swords. This village, almost identical to so many others in Xanthos, had no stronghold for people to flee to, no soldiers to fight back. It wasn't war. It was butchery. "Dion!" Cobb's concerned voice broke through his reverie. Dion blinked, and the dragons were gone. He realized he was clutching the reins tightly. The village was as it had been before, a small settlement of thatched houses with smoke snaking up from chimneys. Nearby, fields of wheat made a patchwork of the lowlands, while goats and sheep milled on the green hills. The people who lived in the houses and worked the fields led simple lives, centered on family and the flow of the seasons. They were the lifeblood of Dion's kingdom. Their efforts fed the urban population in the city. If war came, when war came, he didn't know how he would protect them. He saw that Cobb had brought his wagon to a halt. The old man sat on the driving seat, his round, bald head turned to look back at Dion. His worried expression was familiar. Cobb had been like a father to Dion, ever since he'd first taught him to sail as a boy, and lines of concern were etched into his weathered face. "Lad?" Cobb's voice was rough and gravelly. "It's nothing," Dion said. He nodded ahead, indicating the trail they were following. "We should push on." Dion dug in his heels and his horse put on a burst of speed to catch up with Cobb. Heading north, they would soon be leaving Xanthos behind. The dirt road was wide enough for both Dion's horse and Cobb's wagon, and drooping trees by the roadside provided blessed shade from the burning sun. It was high summer, and the two men were tanned deep brown. Holding the reins, Cobb grunted at the cart horse and then glanced at Dion again. Cobb now looked curious rather than concerned, but Dion kept his thoughts to himself. The vision of dread stayed with him. Dion had taken valuable time away from preparing his defences to make this journey, and he prayed to all the gods that he would be successful. He had shaved and dressed in his finest tunic, which was crimson, the colour of Xanthos, and belted with a golden cord, marking him out as royalty. His flaxen hair was neatly combed, and his pale brown eyes were filled with purpose, but he hadn't brought an escort with him. Something told him that the man he wanted to make an impression upon wouldn't appreciate the arrival of armed soldiers, and so Dion and Cobb travelled alone. "Saddle," Cobb said, nodding at a sign by the road. It was a vertical stone slab. The lettering on it was clear and crisp. "You are now leaving Xanthos. The domain of the king ends here." Worry gnawed at Dion's stomach as he rode. He was a king, and accustomed to being treated as such. But the man they were visiting, the famed philosopher Xenophon, had deliberately sited his school outside the border. The statement was obvious. He was ruled by no one. Xenophon answered only to himself. The trail continued to climb for mile after mile. Cobb tried to make conversation but gave up. Dion obviously wasn't in the mood. Time passed, and then the road rounded a bend to reveal a distant stone wall and a pair of wooden gates. Dion's anxiety grew. He had so much to do, and hoped this journey wouldn't be in vain.